This is Locked On Sports Atlanta, and it's time for the Atlanta Football Party, only on Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Atlanta Football Party, your home for the best Atlanta Falcons football talk. It's local insight you can't get anywhere but here at Locked On. I'm your host, Tenitra Batiste. Alongside me are Falcons analyst Jarvis Davis, Locked On Falcons host Aaron Freeman, and 11 Alive anchor Maria Martin. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. And of course, the Atlanta Football Party is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So, we want to be competitive, but is the guy in place for the Falcons to be that? We will talk about it coming up next. Also, Raheem Morris mentioned that the 2024 draft class gives him confidence that the defense will be better in 2025, but what's it giving to you? We'll talk about that as well. And Coach Ra also spoke about signing a guy and that giving them flexibility, but is that flexibility giving us anything tea leaf style? We'll talk about that as well. And of course, we know about the cordial combo that happened between the big guy and QB2. We'll talk about that as well. But first, before we get to all of that, we know that there were some big time owners meetings, the spring owners meetings that took place earlier this week. And when speaking with the media there, Raheem Morris was asked about the addition of Leonard Floyd and mentioned he liked the basketball team Floyd references in his introductory presser. So, Jarvis, for you, Morris also mentioned that, quote, he can't have enough rush in his follow-up. But does this get us closer to the free guarantee? Meaning the Aaron Freeman guarantee of a pass rusher in the first round, for those of you who for some reason weren't with us last week.
Yeah, come on. I think that it should get us closer, right, on the surface. But for me, on paper, right, or on record, right, it gets us closer. But, we can't look at anything dealing with the Atlanta Falcons, anything dealing with Atlanta's professional sports teams without digging a little bit, right? Because we have to go into the precedent that this front office has set with us. We've been going into every draft for the last 7 years talking about a need for addressing the edge rusher position in the first round, and we haven't seen that. So yeah, if I get a little skeptical as to what this front office is going to do in the draft, yeah, I need to be able to accept those feelings. I know it's not therapy Mondays, but you know what I'm saying? Like, I have to be able to acknowledge my feelings, my gut that tells me that them mofos still could potentially draft an offensive player in the first round. So yeah, I get it. It gets me closer. It gets me feeling happy because I love the idea. I've always talked about throwing waves of guys at the opposing quarterback, and the Falcons didn't have one last year. So yeah, if you can get multiple guys that can go in there and put their hand in the dirt on third and long and get to the quarterback, absolutely, that is a dream come true for me. But yeah, on the surface, we'll get closer. But from an Atlantan, yeah, they can still mess this up. It's possible.
So we have to caveat that with triggers as well. Of course, Hawks triggered because the last couple of games they tricked off games. So that's a trigger that it kind of connects with the Falcons. You just can't help yourself. The Braves are tricking off the whole darn season so far. So, of course, that is a trigger as well as to why, as much as we want to lean into Free's 100% guarantee, it's just difficult to, because we keep looking at those other teams that are telling us something ain't right, something ain't right. But, Jarvis, I wanted to just clarify as well when we were talking, when you mentioned that you still don't feel 100% certain that the Falcons organization wouldn't go with an offensive player. Are we talking just those skill positions, or are we saying, hey, you'd be traumatized even if they went with an O lineman?
As a trench, champion. Yeah.
Okay,
as a trench champion. Yeah. As a trench champion in this city, it would be hard. I would lose it. I'll be honest. I would lose it. I would probably do something crazy in the reaction show, after that happens, Aaron and I, get a chance to do something together after that. Yeah, I will lose it in some form or fashion. However, Aaron and I, we had this conversation on Locked On Falcons and on previous football party. they need to have a plan for that offensive tackle spot because Jake Matthews he's exceeded whatever I thought he was going to be able to do for this team. And to be as consistent as he's been, he's not the greatest tackle, but he's been the top half of the league from a starting standpoint tackle since he stepped in the door. And he's there every Sunday. So
literally.
At some point, something is going to go down with him. And I'm not projecting any injuries or anything like that. I hope that everything works out for him from an injury standpoint in this year. But you got to have a succession plan, right? And then on the right tackle that you probably not going to bring back for another contract. Maybe you may not. You know, you took some time out to figure out if you want to do it for a second contract, but he's going into his last year too. So hey, it would hurt my soul, but I understand.
Yeah. And then there's the question of whether or not you have, and we'll talk about this, of course, later, so I don't want to get too much into it, but do you have that guy or do you not have that guy under center? So that's why I wanted to just kind of clarify. But for you, Maria, I mean, the question could be the same as well. Like when you look at the comments that Raheem Morris made and him saying you can't have enough rush in a follow-up, and it's like, does this get you any closer to the free guarantee? Are you a little bit sketchy or concerned about it as well? Where are you after that comment from Coach Rock?
Well, one thing I want to bring up that Arthur Blank said while he was at the meetings in Palm Beach, shout out 561 native, that is me. He talked about he's a big believer in succession planning. So it's going back to Jarvis's point. You know, he really believes in having a plan for whoever's next. And so if you want to talk about tea leaves or them tipping you off on anything, that to me is a glaring point that they do need to have a succession plan for other positions. It doesn't mean that, you know, edge could potentially be a free guarantee. I love that we've coined this term. I love that Free has been so positive and thinking that the Falcons will absolutely 100%, no matter what, go for a defensive player in the first round.
There's some sarcasm though, Maria, just so you know.
Of course there is. Of course there is. There's like a sliver, but he's the most positive. I think I'm probably in the middle, and then Jarvis, you know, you can be a little skeptical sometimes. And to be fair, like, you have every right to do that. You've watched this team throughout, you know, your whole life. And so you've been through a lot with this team. So I get it. But, you know, for me, I don't know. I think that defense is where they should go. I've said it for weeks now. I've said it for months now. But there is a slight inkling that it is a possibility that they go for a tackle in the first round if they feel like it's strong enough. You've seen, you know, the last couple of weeks, they're going to private workouts for some of the top tackles. They're going to pro days where there's a lot of tackles that could go in the first round. And you guys mentioned Jake Matthews. He's an 11-year veteran. He literally is there every Sunday. Remember the video of him running in his slides after his wife Maggie gave birth? Like, this guy is dedicated. He's there every Sunday. Thank goodness he hasn't been hurt. And then Caleb McGarry is now the blindside tackle for Michael Penix Jr. You need to have a plan going into the next couple of years. And that's exactly why they drafted Michael Penix. They proved the succession plan literally last year at the draft. So, you know, I hope that free guarantee comes through. I really do. But I don't want people to be totally shocked if there's a tackle coming off the board in the first round.
Yeah. And Aaron, when you think about that, it's funny. Thank you, Maria, for covering my mental lapse, because succession plan was the word that kind of came to mind that I wanted to ask you about. So you covered it and answered it for me. But Aaron, I'd like to ask you that question as well, because, I think that the Falcons did a solid in getting Michael Penix Jr., but we also know they did a solid after being traumatized for several seasons of it not working for them, Mariota, it not working. It just, you know,
the quarterback documentary, it's something goes wrong with Netflix quarterbacks. Every time they're featured, they just blow up, I guess. That's what happens with the Falcons. Kirk, same situation. Go ahead.
And then there's Desmond Ridder, which we don't have an answer for. But when you look at that plan, everything blew up after Matt Ryan, or really after they didn't get Deshaun Watson. And so it was really, Michael Penix Jr. was more of a good panic move, but it was like, we don't want to go through that trauma again. But I'm not sure whether or not this team sees the importance of succession planning as it relates to the offensive side of the ball. But let's just be honest, on the defensive side of the ball, you do have a couple of folks that are long in the tooth there as well. And you do have some that are shaky. So with succession planning, we talk about not just replacing the guy that's about to say retire or is on the other side of, the good part of his career, but also succession as in succeeding you because you ain't great. So all of those things kind of considered, and the comment that Raheem Morris made earlier, are we still as close, we meaning free, are we still as close to the free guarantee?
Well, every time we say free guarantee, I get a little bit more nervous that it's not going to happen.
I'm sorry. It's my fault, honestly.
And it's just like, yeah, I don't like having my name put on it, to the point, like, but I think it's all your fault. Yes, it is. It is going to be all my fault.
It's my fault, not your fault, because I came up with free guarantees, so it falls on me ultimately. Aaron, go for it.
So I look at it, and I think, as both Maria and Jarvis have said, like, the Falcons do need to plan for the future at offensive tackle, but I don't think that should be the priority for this team at this point in time, because you look at where the state of the defense is, and right now they were basically like a bottom 5 defense last year, and there's no reason as we sit here today to think that they're going to be significantly better than that this upcoming season. Again, we're putting all our hopes in Jeff Ulbrich to sort of change the defense and fix the defense. And I just feel like I as a Falcon fan and a Falcon observer, I've watched this team time and time again convince themselves that, hey, we just get a different defensive coordinator in here, whether it was Dan Quinn in 2019 or Raheem Morris in 2020 or Dean Pease in 2021 and 22, or, and like it, changing the scheme doesn't ever fix the defense. The times when the Falcons have had halfway decent defenses, it's because they went out and invested free agent and draft resources into that, like we saw in 23 with Ryan Nielsen. And so when we talk about a succession plan, you have Leonard Floyd on a 1-year contract. Arnold Ebiketie going into the final year of his contract, right? And so when you look at that edge rusher room, it's basically after this season, it potentially could just be Braylon Trice. And no offense to Braylon Trice, but he's coming off an ACL. He's a 3rd-round pick. Like, that's just not good enough. And so, we can talk all we want about the succession plan at offensive tackle, but like the priority should be finding an edge rusher that you can build around that can be a franchise cornerstone at this position, and help this defense get to some level of respectability, as opposed to the offensive line, which certainly is going to undergo changes in the coming years, given the ages of some of their tackles and whatnot. But like, that's something that you can put on the back burner. You've put enough resources in that offensive line, in that offensive skill room with Michael Penix, that you should be able to get by this season with what you have on the offense. You cannot get by with what this team currently has on the defense. And so I sit here and I go like, yeah, it's certainly possible that the Falcons will sit here and prioritize positions that they don't need to be prioritizing, like offensive tackle over defensive pass rushers. As the Falcons, as Jarvis is, in his jadedness, I'm just as jaded. I'm choosing to believe that this team has finally turned a corner and will finally do the thing that we have been clamoring for, as Jarvis said, 7 years now, to, just get a pass rusher. That's all you got to do.
It's that simple, right? And that's why, I was asking about the succession plan on the defensive side of the ball as well, because like you said, and like I mentioned, a succession plan doesn't always mean just the person who's next to retirement. Going back to my corporate days, literally, when you lay out that succession plan, you're looking at all the positions, right? And you're not just saying, oh, Joe is about to retire. You're also saying, hey, that Jane over there, she's not about to retire, but she's kind of middling. She's one of our average employees. And what we want to do in our succession plan is replace him and get ready to replace her too. So you've got spaces on the defensive side of the ball that look like that succession plan needs to be addressed as well. But the reality is we know what we're working with. So you still have to ask yourself what it might mean if the Falcons don't draft an edge rusher or edge defender in the 1st round. And it feels like, God, this would be a waste of time. Or I'm just going to throw it out there to you guys real quick. Jarvis, Maria, Aaron, what if the Falcons get that, I guess the sought after, which would be, hey, we get to trade back and we get an extra pick. But that also means that we may not get our guy on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, if it was a certain scenario like that, would you still feel like, oh my God, all this defensive talk has just been a waste of time?
Oh, for me, if they're able to trade back and they draft a player and an offensive player in the first round, just said Kelvin Banks, right? They did a private workout with him, and they're able to get a third round pick, and they go edge in second and third.
Mm-hmm.
I can stomach that because I feel like this draft is one of those drafts where it's perfect timing to have a need for edge rusher because there is a lot of value in a second. It's going to be a lot of value in the second and third rounds when it comes to that edge rusher spot. Yeah. And I'll be able to stomach it. Like I said, I still probably lose my mind. But if you're able getting more assets to throw enough bodies that you can have on that defense side of the football, and they have that talent, they have the ability to get home, even if that's the only best trait. Like I don't need a whole player in those second and third rounds, especially given where the Falcons are on the defense side of the football. So yeah, I would be able to stomach it, but it'll sting a little bit. But if you're able to get those assets to throw that wave of guys at quarterbacks, I'm cool.
Yeah, I'm in a similar boat. I feel like we've been down the road of day two edge rushers and pass rushers. It hasn't really worked for the Falcons up to this point. So I'm just like, hey, try something different by taking one of those guys in the first round. But as Jarvis laid out, like in a world where the Falcons move back and get extra picks, it opens up them to have a little bit more luxury to veer off the beaten path, I guess you could say, in terms of addressing positions early that may not necessarily be the biggest priority.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the same boat. And I think we've all agreed that draft capital is important for the Falcons, but it's also still very important for them to go defense in the first round. And this was going back to what Aaron was saying a little while ago. I think being positive about what the Falcons may do with that first round pick is super important because that's all we have at this point. We all know that defense has to be the priority, not getting more draft capital, even though that's important, but your priority at this point, if you're the Falcons, it is drafting help to get after the quarterback. That is it. That's what you need. We have not seen that come through in the last couple of years. Terry Fontenot's never drafted a defensive player in the first round. You have to add to that side of the football as best as you can. And there were limitations for the Falcons, obviously, financially with the salary cap issues that they've had. So your option is going to be in the draft. And so you can't really lose if you're getting draft capital. That definitely helps because having only 5 picks is not going to help you too much. So I have a feeling that the Falcons will get a little bit creative when it comes to acquiring some more picks.
Yeah, I was thinking cook was the word that came to mind for me, Maria. Like, okay, Terry, if you want me to say you cooked like we were back home, like your gumbo is right and the roux was all set, then you go ahead and you move back in the first round, get yourself a defensive player, go get another pick for the second or third round, and then I'll feel like you actually cooked. And maybe that kind of satisfies everything, especially if there's maybe that one player who kind of moves, drops down on the board, and it's the quality player.
Which is going to happen. We know that's going to happen.
You know it will. So to me, that's kind of the best case scenario for Terry Fontenot in this upcoming draft. Now, Raheem Morris had some thoughts on a position that we kind of hinted at. Should he be comfortable that he's got his guy, or do they need to look for an upgrade there? We'll talk about that on the other side. This episode of our Atlanta Football Party is brought to you by Game Time. Imagine watching your favorite team live, feeling the energy of the crowd, and witnessing unforgettable moments. There's nothing like experiencing a big game in person, and that's live, by the way. Getting tickets shouldn't be stressful. That's where Game Time comes in, making it easier than ever to grab last-minute seats at unbeatable prices. So curation makes it easier to find better value for tickets to sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. And if you check out the Game Time app, there are some really amazing deals on some huge matchups coming up. And of course, the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you the 110% of your difference. That's their super deal. And you can have peace of mind because the seat views before you buy, the no surprise fees, and the lowest price guarantee, that makes you book with total confidence. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. That's LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Download that Game Time app today, of course, after you finish watching the Atlanta Football Party, because Game Time gives you last-minute tickets at lower prices guaranteed. So, Maria, Ryan Raheem Morris rather had this to say on Ryan Newsel, quote, "We want to be competitive at every position, but we feel confident with Ryan Newsel at the position. So should the Falcons be comfortable with Newsel as the starter at center?"
Yeah, because they don't have another option. I mean, that's literally the option that's on the table. Like there's a difference between saying we're comfortable with Kirk Cousins as our backup than we're comfortable as Ryan Newsel as our starting center. He gave you 8 games in place of Drew Dalman last year, graded out around the 60s, I believe, in both pass and run blocking. It's fine. It's fine. And it has to be fine because I don't really know what your other option is. You have Javon Gwynn, who's not going to give you a whole lot of competition. I don't think they're in the offseason. So unless they try to address that elsewhere, this is the option that you have. And we know that it's serviceable. We know that it's fine. You've gotten 8 games out of him to see that he can actually play. Well, I don't know, but that's your option. So I think you have to be comfortable with it.
Yeah. And I think too, this is one of those situations where if you have to go in with the mindset that, hey, this is who we have, Maria. And I think, Aaron, the only other option is that maybe you get lucky again in one of the with a third round or a later pick, and you get like a Drew Dalman situation where maybe, but obviously I think you would want the center you draft to maybe get up to speed just a little bit faster because you kind of don't have that kind of development time that you had with Drew Dalman, but maybe get lucky enough to get a center who maybe is a work in progress, a bit of a rough draft in the draft, but still has enough of a ceiling and enough of a quick turnaround for you to be confident that guy can be under center with my new starting QB, meaning full season starting QB, and Michael Penix Jr.
Yeah, I think you nailed it when you say it's really about getting lucky, because at this point, like, you look at the Falcons' history of drafting centers over the last, 15, 20 years, going back to Joe Hawley and Drew Dalman and Matt Hennessy. None of these guys were, they were drafted with the idea that they're going to eventually be starters at center, but they didn't do that year one. And when you look at the recent history of NFL rookies that have come in and hit the ground running as solid starters, guys like Creed Humphrey, guys like Zach Frazier with the Steelers this past year, you go back to like Ryan Kelly when he was with the Colts and whatnot. There's a kind of a through line, a consistent through line where all of those guys were multi-year starters at the center position in college, where you get those reps where it's like, okay, I've done this for a number of years. So you contrast that with someone like Jared Wilson, who's the top center, widely considered the top center out of Georgia. He's only a 1-year starter. So even if you draft Jared Wilson, as talented as he is, like, he's probably not going to be that type of guy that's likely to come into the league right away and be an effective starter immediately. And so you're just kind of hoping to get lucky. And it's a similar conversation, even if you don't get that competition in the draft. Like, you're maybe hoping that when we get to August, some team is looking at their veteran center and being like, we're going to go younger, and they're going to cut that guy, and then the Falcons can kind of scoop him up. I remember a couple of years ago, before the Falcons got Bradley Pinion, their punter, right? Punter was a need in that offseason, and then the Bucs decided in like June, we're going to cut Bradley Pinion and go with, I think, Jake Camarda, the Georgia punter at that time. And the Falcons were like, okay, we'll take Bradley Pinion off your heads. Like, we were looking for a punter. And so that's kind of the situation with the Falcons at the center position, where if you're really trying to get some competition that you feel good about against Ryan Newsel, as Maria mentioned, Javon Gwynn hasn't done anything up to this point that makes you feel like he's a realistic challenger for that. You're just hoping to get lucky at this point in time. So I think Maria's right, where it's like, right now you have to be comfortable with Ryan Newsel, because as we sit here today, there's not, some magic center that seems like he's going to be walking through that door that's going to come in and be like, I got this, guys. Don't worry about the center position for the next year or two with Michael Penix. I got it. It's just, you're just kind of hoping that it all comes together in somehow, some way, whether that's Newsel, whether that's a draft pick, whether that's a veteran down the road. It's just, you just got to be comfortable with it.
Hey, Jarvis, I don't know that Free meant for me to think about the Lucky Charms leprechaun when he said lucky, but that's where I went with my mind. So I don't know if that's the kind of luck that Terry Fontenot needs when it comes to a center, getting himself a Lucky Charms, magically delicious leprechaun situation, but it might actually take some of that trickery, if I'm being honest and being serious, because it may be either someone, a center who is a work in progress, but maybe gets it faster than he looks like he would on the draft side, or miraculously a team decides, hey, we wanted to keep our quality center, our solid center, but the numbers and whatever else just didn't match up. We march ourselves to June 1st, and all of a sudden the floodgates open. But ultimately speaking, for you, we don't know that as of today. So if they're confident with Ryan Newsel at that position. Are you confident and comfortable with Newsel as a starter?
I mean, I guess for me, not really. I can't sit up here and say that I'm confident that Ryan Newsel is going to go out there and play 17 games and you're never going to see any type of issues, right? Because, and as I was thinking about this, this morning I went back and watched, I think it was the second start, against Tampa, the primetime game. He put up 36 points and won in overtime on throw to Cardell Hodge. And it was a little bit up and down, right? And for the most part, I saw some things that I really liked, specifically in the run game and wide zone. And for him to be able to reach a outside shade of the guard tackle and get his feet around, work his feet around and get in between him and the ball carrier, that's great stuff. That's great to see. But there were also some downfalls too, right? Like leaving Vita Vea unblocked, and letting him get a clear path to Kirk Cousins and put all that weight on Kirk Cousins' soul. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it's just things like that. And a lot of times, and Free and I were talking about this before we got started, a lot of times those are the qualities of a backup center, right? Yeah. A guy who can come in and give you a few starts. And, when your starter is hurt, and you expect for there to be some lapses, right? And we saw that run game take lapses when Ryan Newsel was in the game. So I can't say that a guy who's undrafted, no offense no shade against undrafted guys, because a guy that everyone is talking about them bringing in for competition, David Andrews, he was undrafted too. So but when you think about how often that happens, it's not much. It doesn't happen often. So yeah, he's gonna need his lucky charms if he's thinking about bringing a veteran guy like Andrews in. If he doesn't want to retire right now. So yeah, it's just a lot of different layers comes to when you're talking about, are you comfortable with, or are you confident about Ryan Newsel going into the season being a starter? Because I'm so big on competition. I feel like competition breeds good to great, and greatness. If you don't have that, I feel like someone is going to get comfortable, and you don't want an undrafted guy like Appalachian State to get comfortable being a starter for this team going into the September.
Yeah, it sounds like we don't know if we have a full confidence in that particular person, Ryan Newsel, at center for that particular position. But there are some other positions, especially on the defensive side of the ball, where Raheem Morris said he was confident. But have we seen enough of a sample size for us to feel the same? We'll talk about it when we come back. So, Maria, I thought this was interesting because, of course, we're talking about the confidence that Raheem Morris and the Falcons expressed in Ryan Newsel, but he also mentioned the 2024 draft class. And again, we're talking about some of the comments that came out of this week's owners meetings in Florida and West Palm. I think you mentioned specifically he was mentioning that the 2024 draft class gave him confidence that the defense will be better in 2024. But like I said, I'm not sure how you can have a full or high level of confidence with, I'm going to call it an incomplete sample size, right? Because you look at Rukaroro, and we saw flashes, but I don't know that we saw enough flashes because, hey, I need 17 games on a rookie in order for me to feel like I know what that rookie is truly capable of. So we didn't have an opportunity to see that, if you will. So, and then you kind of look at that whole class. We talked about Braylon Trice as well. Didn't get to see what he was able to do. So I'm not sure how I have the kind of confidence that Raheem Morris has based on what you need to see out of this defense coming out of the gates in 2025. But for you, do you have confidence that they're going to carry the torch and make this defense better?
I don't have the confidence that Raw does. And I think that Raw actually has to say things like this heading into the draft because he wants to be like, hey, those 8 picks that we picked last year, most of them on defense, obviously you've got a wide receiver, a running back, and a quarterback sprinkled in there. But the other ones were all defense. We're confident about those guys. We had a great draft. It's all great. You have to say that heading into the NFL draft, which is right around the corner later this month. If he doesn't, then we're all thinking, first of all, they have no idea how to draft, which some people do think that. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's the reality. You're right.
I didn't say that, but I'm serious.
Bluntness going on here.
Out there.
No, but that's what people think. There is a reason why we continue to say Terry Fronto, this is perhaps his most important draft class, and he only has 5 picks to do that with. As we stand here today, there's only 5. So, for me, no, I don't have the confidence simply because like you're talking about, there's no sample size great enough for these young guys to give me all of the confidence in the world that they are going to carry the torch for the defense. The defense has not been good in a long time. And you mean to tell me that a 2024 draft class who has barely played, if not played at all, is going to carry the torch? That's really, it's a hard sell. It's a hard sell. You saw JD Bertrand quite a bit, which he's been a really nice surprise for you. Rook, as you mentioned, had shown some flashes. I will say though, when I was at Georgia's Pro Day, I actually picked the brain of one of the Falcons defensive coaches about this specifically, about that 2024 draft class. Like, how do you feel about Brandon Dorless and Braylon Trice? And the comment specifically regarding them is, I just don't have enough on them to really tell you. And so that should tell you everything that you need to know. It's Raw needing to instill confidence in people because the draft is coming up. I don't know if he fully believes that, which is okay. I think it's a really hard sell with guys that haven't played a lot of football to make people believe they're just going to all of a sudden turn one of the worst defenses in the NFL into a top half.
Yeah. And can I just say this? And I mean, this is a little bit off the beaten path, but it's a little bit frustrating. So I got to kind of get it out. Maria, I'm so glad you mentioned what the coach said at Georgia's Pro Day, because that's what I want to hear more of. I want to hear more of, let's make things competitive. Let's not allow you to rest on your laurels. Like, I don't need to be in there giving everybody a trophy, right? I'm more of the mindset of make them know it's going to be a competition. Yeah, you got drafted last year, and yeah, maybe you had some unfortunate situation, whether you never got to play a snap or whether you got to play limited snaps due to injury. But I don't know, Jarvis, Aaron, I just had to kind of get that out there. Like, okay, Rod, great that, you're trying to encourage your guys and let them know that you're confident in them. I would rather him have found a way to say what that coach said to Maria in, of course, a more PC way. I totally get that part. But I'd rather him let them know, hey, you're on notice. Like, I don't care that we drafted you last year. I don't care if we drafted you high last year. You're on notice that you're going to have to show improve because this defense is in need of some dogs. And I'm not about to just sit here and go, I got confidence in you just because we drafted you and I want you to feel good. I want them to let everybody, maybe short of Michael Penix Jr. and his wide receivers and his running back, maybe other than those rooms and maybe the DBs, every damn body needs to be on notice. So I'm sorry that comment bothered me. I know I wasn't the one supposed to answer the question, but that part bothered me a bit because I just feel like, nah, bro, keep everybody on guard.
I'm with you, T. Like, show me the baby. A famous philosopher by the name of Hugh Douglas said that, once. Like, show me the baby, man. I don't want to hear all the whining and crying. Yeah, 20. Because that's what it sounds like to me. That's noise. It's white noise to me at this point. Like, because for you to have an entire class, outside of Michael Penix, come in here and contribute nothing. I don't care about the future. Like it's now. The future is now. Like, you can't draft guys and have 3-year plans for them because we still talking about Arnold Ebikete's plan. What is it? Okay, yeah, he's giving you something. Yeah. Okay.
That's something.
That's something. I need some stuff. Like, I almost cussed right there. Sorry, you know what I'm saying? Y'all excuse me. You know what I'm saying? I'm getting in my feelings right now.
Yeah,
it's super frustrating because every year we go through this. Every year we go through this same song. Well, the Falcons need to add to the pass rush. Well, we have a plan for these guys. And when they come in, and we're going to have this reclamation projects and do all this stuff in 2-3 years down the road and everything like that. No, man. I need guys to come in here and have an immediate impact on defense.
Now.
ID. Now. Right now.
Yeah. Sorry, Free. I know we kind of went, Jarvis and I kind of went down the dark path on that one, but when I reread that question and thought about the context of it, it just bothered me.
No, I get it. Look, I think Maria nailed it when she said carrying the torch. If you're asking this 2024 rookie draft class on the defensive side of the ball to carry the torch, meaning that they're going to be the guys leading the charge for the defensive improvement. Yeah, I have zero confidence that these guys are going to be able to do that. And again, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we're sitting here being like, man, Rook is balling this year. Brandon Dorlus is balling. Man, like
that'd be great.
I'm all for it.
We're having that conversation, but there's no reason for me to be sitting here thinking that is the conversation that we're definitely going to be having, right? Because it would be a different world if you had some pillar players at key positions up front, in the middle, in the secondary, and you do, right? You have AJ Terrell, you have Jesse Bates, you have Caden Ellis, but at the end of the day, like, these are still the guys that you're counting on to be your biggest playmakers on this defense. And if this defense is going to be good, it's going to be because those guys are putting out all pro type effort, and then these rookies, the Dorluses, the Trices, the Bertrands, etc., all these guys are just contributors, right? Like, that's all they should be expected to be, contributors, right? Positive contributors, certainly bigger contributors in 2025 than they were in 2024, because as Jarvis and you and everybody else said, their contributions in 2024 was a big fat zero. So it's one of those things where it's just like, the only path is up, right? So I look at it like, yes, I think these guys can contribute to this defense, but if you're asking them, as Maria said, to carry the torch and be the difference makers and be the impact players, and we're sitting here saying like, oh man, we beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers because Ruccaroro in the fourth quarter with 3 minutes left was able to sack Baker Mayfield, give the ball back to Michael Penix, and he went down the field and scored the points. Like, I'm not expecting that. So like, I sit here and I go like, I'm glad that Raheem is saying all this stuff, but I remember him going on a Pivot podcast last summer talking about, and when Ryan Clark, it was like, your defense is terrible, and he was like, no, our defense is great because we got this guy and this guy and this guy and this guy, and like none of those guys lived up to that. So I'm just like, as Jarvis said, was like this, it's all talk at this point in time. So he can talk the talk, but we'll see if he can walk the walk.
Exactly. Right. And here's another thing I thought of, and I promise I'm going to let it go and leave it alone so we can move on. But what damn torch? The torch of not getting sacks, the torch of not getting to the quarterback. I mean, what torch are we talking about here? The torch of not being able to get it done up front because, hey, we're getting a little bit long in the tooth there, Contavia Street. And, Grady wasn't who Grady was, and David Onyemata, wasn't who he was. And you really didn't see maybe as many shades of Contavious as we saw the year before when they acquired him from the Philadelphia Eagles. So I'm looking up and down, and that's why I said my caveat was to say, other than the DB room on that defensive side of the ball, not quite worried about what's on the offensive side, but I'm thinking to myself, carrying what torch? I mean, what did you do that's worth carrying a torch for other than what your DBs did? So that's why, again, that comment, as I began to really think about it, it was very frustrating because I just feel like, let's not play games with what this defense was. Let's not do that, because if you do, then you're almost making me seem, it feels to me like, are you saying a little bit of, I don't want to say contradictory, but I'm going to say contradictory. It's almost like, are you being a little bit contradictory because you're saying you're going after defensive players and we're going to focus on defense and we're going to lean into defense, but then you're also saying that you feel like what you got is solid. Which one is it? Like, which one is it? And so as I began to kind of look at the commentary, it's like, yeah, feeling a little bit like double talk, making me feel a little bit concerned. But speaking of the DB room, I will say that there are definitely positives in that room that maybe give the Falcons a little bit of encouragement that they have some flexibility about what they do in the first round. We'll talk about that on the other side. This episode of our Atlanta Football Party is brought to you by Game Time. Imagine watching your favorite team live, feeling the energy of the crowd, and witnessing unforgettable moments. There's nothing like experiencing a big game in person. Getting tickets shouldn't be stressful. That's where Game Time comes in, making it easier than ever to grab last-minute seats at unbeatable prices. So with Game Time picks, curation makes it easier to find better value for tickets to sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. And if you check out the Game Time app, you'll see that there are some amazing deals on some huge matchups coming up. So the lowest price guarantee is also a super deal for you because Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference if you find a lower priced ticket. So with seat views before you buy as well, no surprise fees, a lowest price guarantee, that tells me you can book with total confidence. So download the Game Time app today and create an account. and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. That's LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today, right after you wrap up the Atlanta football party. For last-minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed with Game Time. So, guys, Raheem Morris also spoke about the signing of Mike Hughes and how it gives the Falcons flexibility because he can play both outside and nickel. And when you think about that flexibility, Maria, would you say that it would be out of the realm of possibility that the Falcons draft a corner in the first round? And when I say out of the realm of possibility, I think leaning more into probability than maybe possibility, because we know everything's possible. So maybe looking at it from the perspective of, is it more probable?
Yeah, I literally was going to say, look, anything's possible. We covered this team. Anything is possible. Right. So you took the words right out of my mouth.
That part.
That's what's so frustrating, that anything is possible.
Right. Anything is possible. I mean, I told y'all the story about how I was up there in Detroit last year, and an hour before the draft started, I had someone walk over to me and said, I need you to be prepared for the Falcons to pick Michael Penix. And I was like, excuse me, what? And it came true. So yes, anything is possible. Now after that happened, I'm like, you know what? Whatever. Draft a wide receiver in the first round. Anything is possible. No, I think.
Sorry, excuse me, y'all. Sorry.
Wait, what did you say?
Like, you know what? Like, sorry, Maria. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out a way to mute Falcons, #Falcons, and wide receiver. Can I mute a hashtag and a position?
Yeah.
Like anybody who mentions those two things.
You want. Yeah.
Anyone who mentions those, like,
yeah, I'll help you out.
I'm gonna figure out a way to do it. I'm gonna let y'all know.
Like, please do, for the love of God.
I'm muting anyone who puts those two words in the same sentence. Sorry, Maria. Continue. My bad.
Okay.
That was on my heart.
Yeah, I was kidding, by the way. I was completely kidding. I was just saying anything is possible. They're not going to draft. That's a free guarantee. They're not going to draft a wide receiver in the first round. Okay, that is a free guarantee.
I'm clipping that one.
Okay, good. It is a free guarantee. And when they wide receiver in the first round, then great.
Yeah.
So. Right, exactly. So I've talked about it on this podcast many times that I think corner in the first round could make a lot of sense for you. The reason why, again, I don't think that should be the priority, but that's also not out of the realm of possibilities for the Falcons. When you look at where they need pieces on defense, you need pieces at every level. That has been very crystal clear this entire offseason. And I think for corner specifically, Mike Hughes was really the only one that I talked about made sense to bring back in terms of, do you let D. Alford go, which they did. And I was full in on the train of Mike Hughes because he does give you a lot of versatility. And this is what they're saying with Clark Phillips III and Mike Hughes. Look what we did with Mike Hughes. We proved he can be versatile because now he can show you he can play multiple different positions, corner, nickel, we can put him wherever. We're going to try the same thing with Clark Phillips and see if it works out. The difference, there's many differences to the two players without a doubt. But one of the biggest differences, obviously, is Clark is very differently sized than Mike Hughes. So I think if you can get Clark Phillips to understand, to use his undersized to his advantage, maybe it can work out for you. And I hope that it does. I like Clark. He's a good player. Is he great? I'm not sure. That's kind of where the versatility piece is going to come into play, and experimenting with him to try to see if they can fit him in a different place. This is also, what we've talked about is making wine out of water. The Falcons have to do a lot. And this is another situation in trying to move creatively pieces around within the defense that you have, because you simply don't have that many options right now. That could change in our conversation.
Reduce meat into a meal. I'm with you.
Thank you.
Reduce
yes.
meat into a meal.
Reduce. I didn't say that, but let's welcome it back. But yeah, for me, this is the wine out of water that we're talking about. And yes. I think that our conversation could, right. I think our conversation could drastically change after the draft in late April, because I do anticipate there to be a new corner in the mix.
Maria, it sounds like you're trying to make wine out of water, but you're just making mixing grape juice with Sprite or whatever.
I'm just trying to make whatever scenario I can. I'm trying to be positive. I'm the positive one today, Free. Okay.
I was thinking he was going to say off-brand, like an off-brand drink or something like that. Dang. Like she's mixing the store brand with the national quality brand.
I'm doing the best I can. Okay.
Yes,
Free's like, no.
You are. Excellent job.
What I'll say is this. I think you're right. When it came to bringing back Mike Hughes, it felt like it made a ton of sense because it was the idea of like Mike Hughes is going to give you a floor. But always in my head, it was always the idea of like you're bringing back Mike Hughes with the idea that we're going to upgrade one of those spots so that Mike Hughes is no longer your second best corner, that maybe he's your third best corner, or ideally he'd be your fourth best corner and be like, oh man, this is great. Like Mike Hughes is great. And so I think when we talk about possibility of cornerback going around one, like of all the non-edge rushers that the Falcons could take, I probably would be able to get over them not taking an edge rusher number one. If it's a corner, that would be the easiest one for me to be like, okay, I can rationalize this because it's still part of the same sort of strategy of getting better against the pass. It's just you're building it back to front instead of front to back, which is still frustrating. But at the same time, it's like, well, beggars cannot be choosers when it comes to the Atlanta Falcons because again, we're drinking grape juice mixed with Sprite, not real wine when it comes to this defense. But I look at it like I think there's opportunities for the Falcons to get better at that cornerback position, but like I think it makes total sense for them to prioritize that after their pass rush. And so to me, I'm more circling like round 2 as a prime opportunity to upgrade that cornerback spot. But I do feel like we'll see what Clark Phillips can do. I see Clark Phillips as a high end backup more than a low end or high end starter or whatever at this point in time, but he may get that opportunity to showcase that he can do a little bit more than what we've seen so far.
What about him on the inside? I mean, how do you guys feel about him being used there?
Jarvis, I know you're chomping at the bit to talk about wine out of water. Go for it.
Yes. I was thinking about Apostle Paul reference because I really dig what he got going on. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't want to get too churchy on y'all today, but
so is Clark Phillips the one? So is Clark Phillips the wine or is he the cranberry and Sprite? I'm just asking for a friend.
I mean, can he be like for our, for my sanity, can he be that guy? 113th overall in the 4th round in 2023. Yeah, like I saw some things that I like him playing on the outside, but he's just too light in the dumper. He can't be outside corner.
Especially so he's not top shelf wine. He's wine, but just not top shelf.
No, you know what I'm saying? You know what Clark Phillips can be, and I'll be okay. Andre. You know what I'm saying? That Andre.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Wait, isn't that more champagne?
Yeah, I mean, you know what I'm saying? Flow with me here, Maria. You know what I'm saying? Like
box wine. We could go the Franzia, or is it Franzia? Yeah, let's turn me up Franzia.
Just make him a sparkling cider. Heck, I mean, if we're just gonna take off, we've been taken from the top shelf.
Crying.
You know what? What's the I know the really super strong ginger ale. The name escapes me right now. Oh my God!
Like the ginger beer, like the red.
Not a ginger ale. It's almost like an orange like type. It has a green label. I can't even think of. I don't know why I'm blanking on it. But anyway, not Seagram's. It is a very strong ginger ale. Like it probably will get rid of.
We're not going to try to figure out the name because unless you're going to sponsor this show, we're not talking about it.
Right? No doubt. Yeah, but I think that. As long as he can be was it Francesa? That what you call?
Franzia,
Andre, like serviceable. It'll get the job done. You know what I'm saying? Andre is a cheap,
Andre gets the job done when it needs to.
Get the job done. You know what I'm saying? Like that's all I ask of Clark Phillips right now because
be a boxed wine, baby.
Yep. Be a boxed
wine. Yeah, there we go. Like if he can be that guy, if he can be a guy that, that floor isn't as low as D Offerts. You know what I'm saying, was last year. If you can raise that a little bit, like those are the type of expectations that I have. If you can figure out a way to not have to draft a corner in the first round so you can move Mike Hughes inside, that would be perfect, because Raheem Morris said it himself. He said, hey, he had that conversation with Clark Phillips, so obviously they have a plan. hey man, we're moving you inside, and he's going to be at OTAs on the 22nd when they get things rolling. So for me, I feel like this is part of the plan. They have a plan, and I just hope the man can just be some Andre. That's it. Yeah.
Well, Terry Fontenot keeps calling me. That's why you guys keep hearing that phone in the background, because he wanted to know if you guys were okay with the box wine. So when the show wraps up, Terry, don't call anymore. I'll call you back when the show wraps up, and we'll let you know that the box wine is quite fine.
We're busy, Terry. Thank you, sir. We're busy, sir. Come on.
We're busy trying to help you cook.
Right. Trying to help you out. Trying to help you keep your job, sir.
But anyway, we're also trying to decipher. Now we're going into another space. We apparently are those who are calligraphy experts about what somebody wrote down and whether or not we know how to decipher what that is. We'll talk to you about that on the other side. So Jarvis, Arthur Blank mentioned having a cordial, put that in quotes, conversation with Kirk Cousins. He stated that he took 5 pages of notes during that conversation. But what do you think Arthur Blank wrote down in that conversation? And at the end of the day, does it really even matter?
To answer the second part, I answer that first. It doesn't matter. But the first part, as far as what I thought he wrote down, I would just imagine him having 5 pages of note that say, nope, no, no, hell no, 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 no. And then he wrapped it up at the end to say, in all caps, we're going to do what's best for the organization. And you have to deal with it, sir, because we paid you a lot of doggone money. So you shouldn't be calling me and want to have a meeting with me complaining about anything, because you got away with highway robbery. Or the folks in the hood, you rhymed you blind with no gun. There we go.
Why did my mind go to the other reference of no Vaseline? But Maria, when you think about what that conversation was like,
I don't want to go down there.
Pages of notes. By the way,
you're muted. What'd you say?
I was gonna say, did you mute me? Because I'm just following. Look, I'm just going down the same rabbit hole everybody else went down. Okay.
Yes. Somebody get us back on track, please.
Why not?
Off the rails.
All the way.
What do you think Arthur Blank wrote down? I mean, I think we know it's insignificant because the Falcons are going to do what they're going to do no matter what that conversation, what came out of it. But what do you think he wrote?
Yeah, when I heard that he wrote
Uh-oh.
You on mute.
There you go, Maria.
Yeah.
All right, we're back. Can you hear me?
Is Terry muting our mics too?
I can't hear you guys, but I'll just keep talking.
He's
Thumbs up
working
if you can hear
on
me.
construction.
Right,
You know what I'm saying? He's
Okay, I have no idea what you guys are saying, but I can hear myself,
Yes.
I think. So I'll
We
just
can
say
hear
the
you.
first thing that I thought about, the first thing that I thought about whenever I heard that there were 5 pages of notes from Arthur Blank was he writes really big, because I can't imagine he wrote a lot of words. I think it was just a couple of sentences here and there, maybe not a no and another no, like Jarvis is saying, but I just thought, okay, there must be some large point font on those 5 pages of notes. I also just don't think Arthur's the kind of owner to be very contentious. He's said that over and over. His loyalty to people, good, bad, and different, has proven that over the course of his tenure of being owner of this franchise. So I would love to believe that Jarvis, he's like, we're going to do what's best for the organization and blah, blah, blah. And I don't believe that Arthur's ever been like that. And a lot of people think that that's a bad thing, but I just don't think he's the kind of owner to sit there and have this contentious conversation like, you screwed us over. And because no, they were all in agreement that Kirk could have given them 2 or 3 years. And then obviously that all went south very quickly. I think maybe their conversation, which again, it does not matter at all, is maybe just what he envisions it to look like moving forward to where it works for both parties. You know, he's not going to sit there and be like, Kirk, we're going to give you everything you want now at this point, because we kind of already did that. So what will make sense that will also make sense for us, where you can also be happy? Is it waiving a trade clause, which I'm sure they talked about at nausea? Don't come to voluntary OTAs. You don't have to be there. You know, I'm sure it was stuff like that. But again, it doesn't really matter. Like, none of this stuff matters anymore because the writing is on the wall. The damage has been done. So it is what it is.
Yeah, I think at this point, Free, if the notes might have been something as serious as, yeah, we are going to approve you not being available for certain things that veterans oftentimes are allowed to not go to, right? So maybe that was some conversation like, okay, cool, we'll do that. Or it could have been something as asinine as, well, do I want the chicken fettuccine Alfredo or the lasagna tonight? I don't know. All I know is that the conversation was had, the notes were written, and I want to know what Free thinks about it.
Well, I think you're onto something there with the chicken fettuccine Alfredo comment, T, because I imagine, you know, the notes were being taken on.
Everybody going to Kroger after this show. Can I just say that? Everybody going to the grocery store after this show. But go ahead.
I think Arthur Blank was writing down like Kirk's favorite Chipotle order, right? Because like I'm sure Arthur Blank's probably never been to a Chipotle because, you know, he's a billionaire and he's like,
unless he owns one and we don't know.
He's probably had it delivered.
Yeah,
maybe, sure. Yeah,
I don't think he's like walking up into a Cleveland Chipotle like Kirk did. I don't think that's happening.
So I don't know if Arthur Blank eats peasant food like the rest of us, you know. So I'm just thinking he's probably taking some notes from Kirk Cousins on, you know, what do the little commoners eat, you know, when I come down from my high castle, when I get off my yacht, and eat this food, and like, Kirk, what is your go-to Chipotle order? So I think that's a lot of what
you speak of.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Hey, look, if Arthur Blank doesn't like Waffle House, I would look at him differently. I'm sorry, because
I'm sure he does.
You know what I'm saying? Like, come on, man. That's one of the staples in this city. You know, like, I don't know how we got here, but hey, here we are. To your point, Maria, though,
I'm sure he's heard of it.
Yeah,
I'm saying like ordering like smothered, or like, does he really know?
See, don't you fumble with that. Smothered, covered, and chunked.
Smothered, yeah. So, like, he might not know all of the intricacies of it. So that could have been a conversation. They could have been talking about perfecting the swag surf for all we know. Like, I think in the general scheme of things, we all agree. Whether it's Free, Maria, JD, we all agree. It doesn't matter. At this point, it doesn't change anything. The circumstances and the situation, the circumstances are what they are. The situation is what it is, period. But Blank also said something else that I think you guys might find interesting. The emphasis on the draft will certainly be on the defensive side of the ball. I think that's pretty obvious to everybody. But wasn't the defense the focus last year when they decided to take Michael Penix Jr.? And the defensive side of the ball can still be your focus like it was last year, but last year it was your focus too late. So I don't know. But for me, saying that that's the focus this year, it's like, okay, that's Captain Obvious. The question becomes, will you do what you didn't do last year, which is focus at the top?
I think that what gives me hope, the little hope that I have as of April 3rd, you know, and the draft is on April 24th, that first round, that first night, and the 15th pick of the 2025 NFL draft, and Roger Goodell's voice just rings. I'm imagining that the fact that Raheem Morris was at Mike Green's pro day, he was up there at Ohio State's pro day. You know, now granted, they don't have an edge rusher that I feel that's worth taking at 15, but it just gives me hope that he's doing all this research. He's getting his eyeballs on players and not necessarily listen to the scouts. I mean, he take their scouts, you know, take their input into consideration. But he was like, man, I want to see this guy for myself. Like, that's the small little slither of hope that I have, you know, that it could happen. And, you know, and you can go through and follow through, because at the end of the day, I want to believe this team. I want to believe them. Like, if you all season, all we've been hearing about defense, we didn't talk to any offensive players at the combine, and right, the head coaches out here on the whole big Falcons contingent down in Georgia, UGA, all this stuff. I just want to believe it. Can I believe it one time?
Yeah.
Like, can I not be skeptical once in
You can believe anything you want.
lifetime?
Yeah.
No, but there's one thing. There's a thing called blind faith. Since we, been touching on God a little bit throughout this podcast today, I think that you have to give me a reason to believe.
Yeah.
I have to have something tangible to say, all right, you know what? The Falcons have sucked at getting a guy that can put the quarterback on the ground. But oh my gosh, they drafted Mike Green, a guy who probably would have been on a board in years past. And they said, you know what? You might have a couple of issues, but we feel comfortable with bringing a guy like you into the fold because we know what you can do on the field, and we know you'll be able to handle yourself in Atlanta off the field. So yeah, I just want to be able to believe. That's it.
Here's one of the biggest things that I think the Falcons should get away with, like go away from, is saying the word comfortable. Like, comfortable doesn't win you anything. Comfortable doesn't get you an NFC championship. Comfortable doesn't get you a Super Bowl championship. And so I understand that they are in a situation right now where comfortable may be your only option. But in order to actually get away from being comfortable, it requires you to draft who you're supposed to in the first round, which is somebody who can get after the quarterback, because we have not seen that for years. This has got to be the guy to really save the franchise in that area, or at least jumpstart saving the franchise in that area. You don't want to put all that pressure on the first round pick. That's never going to do anybody any favors. But this person has to be the leader in starting the change at that area for this franchise. That has to be the case. If anything, this draft class forces you to do that. This draft class in particular, above any other draft class in recent history for Terry Fontenot, which, yes, we can argue there have been very serviceable, if not wonderful, first-round draft picks that could change, that could change you on the defensive side of the football. There's so many of them in this draft class. It would be the biggest miss of all time if you completely ignore that in the first round. That's why I feel really good about the free guarantee, because you look at the guys coming out of this draft class and you think, no way the Falcons can mess this up. No way. Until they might.
Anything's possible, right?
Of course.
But Free, we're gonna stick with the free guarantee, the positivity. We're gonna add JD in the mix of that too, because he wants to end on a positive note. And Maria is giving you guys a little bit of license to do that. And I am going to give you guys the same, because hey, for the next 3 weeks, just in case we're not as happy, like 3 weeks from today on the night side, 3 weeks, the next 3 weeks, let's just be positive. Let's just be happy. Let's just be hopeful until someone says otherwise. And hopefully they don't. Thanks to our everydayers for making the Atlanta Football Party your first listen of the day. Be sure to stop by Locked On Falcons with your host, Aaron Freeman, as your second listen. And check out Maria Martin, host of Sports Extra on Sundays on 11 Alive. And check out our guy, Jarvis, who's a frequent contributor for Locked On Falcons and Sports Extra. We'll see you next time.